Good morning, everybody. I swear this week has been just nonstop work, 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 work. Anyway, got a couple more topics that I do want to get knocked out of the way, and we are going to start with the demographics issue. Now, there is, of course, still a decent amount of pressure focusing on the demographic problems that we have in the West and the East, but here's the thing. So, the biggest issue essentially comes down to this. We can't send retirees to war. All right. And this is the thing. This is just going to be right in your face with it. Straight to the point, I should say. We can't send retirees to war, and we have too many of them surviving. We have a very old, decaying society. Now, this isn't just the US, this is China, this is Russia, this is Europe, this is all of the, well, I wouldn't necessarily call Russia wealthy, and not necessarily China too, although they've been doing incredible things. All right. They are, you know, the idea of China being a less than to the United States has slipped significantly. All right. And at the very least, they understand the predicament that they're in. Meanwhile, over in the West and Europe, it's just nonstop gaslighting and let's bring in more brown people from the third world. All right. And you can think whatever you want to think. That's fine. But people focus on Chinese and Russian demographics, noting that if they want war, if there is going to be a war, there's no better time than the present. Okay? The reality is the US is no different. All right? The young people who are capable, just general capability, the people who can really prop up a civilization in decline, the people who work the hardest, pay the taxes, can do the heavy lifting, and essentially the work mules, all right? The guys who are literally driven into the fucking dirt, all right? We're running low on those guys, all right? A lot of them checked out. More importantly, they're not volunteering anymore. Now, personally, do I give a single rat's ass about this? No, I don't. Honestly, nobody should be signing up to fight in the war machine for a system that, well, if you pay attention to current events, the news, anything else, legit news, not the bullshit news, you know damn well that if you have any kind of soul, you should not be fighting for this system. But regardless, demographically, young people who can still breed are indispensable. They don't want to come out and say that, but it's the truth. The population numbers are so low, it's like if you have to, because if you send all your young people off to war to die, all right, even if you draft them, okay, congratulations. Now you still have the same damn problem. Too many retirees, too many people on the system, and not enough people to keep everything up, to work and pay the taxes to keep the system going. All right. In terms of the future, I won't lie to you. We're looking at a snowballing depopulation. All right. And it's not just, just the basics of people not wanting to, at least for the guys, chain themselves into perpetual serfdom to the females and to the state. But you only have like a certain amount of years. If you are going to have kids, ideally you want to have them as soon as you're legal. So 18 to 25 is like the prime years to have kids. Beyond that, you know, in the East, if you have kids beyond 25, they consider that geriatric pregnancy. All right. In the West, because we're so progressive, all right, and we have all the science and technology in the world, mostly because the men have been subsidizing women's quest to just do whatever, because feminism, um, In the West, we consider geriatric pregnancy to be after the 30s, especially after 35. And the chances for, let's assume it's an equal aged pair, so 35-year-old male with 35-year-old female, both of them have a reasonable amount of negative mutations that have happened in their genetic code, that gets translated, that gets transferred to the attempt to have a child. Okay. And again, am I a scientist? No, no, I'm not. But I have ears and I pay attention to things, and I am relatively patched into science and medicine, but I'm also patched into quite a few other things. Anyway, give me just a second here. All right. The biggest issue that we have beyond that, all right, is the less people that are born, because it takes essentially 20 years in the cooker to get somebody from, non-existent to functional member of society, or at least capable of being a functioning member of society. The less people born into the present and going into the future, the closer the finance cliff approaches. Okay. We're already at the point where there's what was it? The last number, it essentially rounds out to two people paying in for every one person taking out when it comes to the overall retirement programs and the systems. That's unsustainable. What's more unsustainable is you've got essentially, using the official numbers, you have a 50% chance. Every single person has a 50% chance of a short-term disability of 0 to 90 days. Roughly a quarter have a chance to be permanently disabled before they reach retirement age. Okay? So 1/4 of the population is already fucked. All right? You tie that with all the retirement, you tie that with the fact that we have less and less young people, and the projection going forward is a continuance of the decline. You project that out for every single, like, honestly, I really should have did the numbers on this beforehand, but the less and less people you have going into the future, the sooner and sooner we get to the point where you're at one person paying in to one person taking out. It's unsustainable. All right, that's just the reality of it. It's unsustainable. All right, and chances are you will end up with the inversion where you get two people taking out for one person putting in. Once you get to that point, the incentives for labor falls off the cliff. All right, because in order to do that, you're talking about 60, 70% tax rates. All right, maybe even 80, 90. All right, it's just not doable. It's not feasible. The cost spread is compressing every single year. The reproduction rate is suppressed. Okay, things are not getting better. On a side note, all right, and it is kind of important that I mention this and get this through to you and across to you. For all of the people on the left who've been screaming fascism for ages, all right, we have a fascist government. You don't know how bad things are going to get if things are not, if the economic system isn't rebalanced, if things are not reverted to a state that was actually reasonable. Okay? Because let me explain how this declining birth rate problem ends. As resources dry up, people are going to get more angry and more aggressive. It's going to be on both sides. All right, you already see a decline in available resources and you see what it's doing to people. It's a large part of the reason why people aren't having kids. All right, even if they were willing to subject themselves to women's bullshit in the court system, they cannot afford to have kids. All right, it's impossible because so much of the wealth, so much of the money, all of the inflation, it's going to prop up boomer assets. All right, because God forbid the boomers lose a single hair out of their retirement, but it's going to prop up everything that the boomers got because of the consequences of the fact that their generation was fucking huge. All right, because their generation was huge, everything they touched turned into a bubble, and because they were in charge of the politics for so long, the every time the boomers ran into an issue financially with the economy, the entire system was shifted to protect them and their assets. Okay? So now everything is so heavily weighted to the boomers that there's no oxygen left in the room for the younger generations to exist outside of a constant state of stress and panic and dread. All right, it's not good for your population numbers. It's not good for reproduction. It's not good for taxes. It's not good for any of this shit. Anyway, back to the fascism. As the resources decline, people are going to get very angry. All right, if you go back to a certain book written by a certain gentleman who was a failed painter with a funny mustache, um, in one of the chapters, one of the lines talks about how a certain working class was reduced to essentially eating the garbage out of a certain other group of people, a wealthy type of people, eating the trash out of their garbage cans, dumpsters, you know. What ended up happening? All of a sudden, a massive push, a change, a redirection where all of a sudden strength was valued and rewarded. The people who go out and are ruthlessly efficient are rewarded. The people who bring home the bacon are rewarded. Okay? As resources dry up, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on, the push for fascism on both sides is going to increase. Okay? Fundamentally, it has to. All right? Unless all of a sudden we're going to watch as the politicians screw over the paid off politicians, screw over all their billionaire friends, and somehow rebalance the economy without a complete collapse of market values. And it's all a load of bullshit. The system fundamentally, in its current form, cannot be rebalanced because of the laws that it already put in place to protect itself. Okay? As far as it comes down to population, fascism is going to do one thing. Okay? Now, it could go two directions. Direction one is it's going to do a lot of propaganda in order to prop up traditional value family formation. And it will most likely reward males in military service and females for shacking up and having kids. Okay? That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the situation is dire and the system is going to do what it has to do. What does that entail? That entails similarly large propaganda campaigns in order to get women to believe that it is their duty and it is their responsibility to the society to submit themselves to state breeding programs. I am not playing. This is what the future looks like if this system does not get rebalanced. Okay? Now, of course, you can draw instant imagery of all of the problems that might come from that, but you will also have the war bride phenomenon, but soldiers will, because there will be war intermixed with this, soldiers will be bringing home war brides if they don't have wives of their own at home. Okay, but who's first in line to these state-sanctioned breeding programs after they do all of the propaganda and brainwashing. State and civil servants, first in line, and military, first in line. The people who the state considers more valuable either for their ability to produce things for the common good of the state and the people, mostly the state, and the people who are passive enough to accept whatever order comes their way and will enact it and follow it through, regardless of moral qualms, anything like that. The people who are either brilliant or incredibly passive and are willing to accept being told when they can and cannot breathe in and breathe out. Those are the people who will be first in line for a fascist state mandated, my apologies, a fascist state mandated reproduction project. Breeding farms. All right. That's the forward outlook. All right, one of the many facets to this gigantic shattered chandelier that is the West. Okay. In terms of countries that don't get their shit together, they're not going to exist. All right, this is essentially going to trigger the demographic collapse is going to trigger a lot of map redrawing, because if your population drops in half, all right, because you're not reproducing at an adequate level, if your population drops in half, if you don't mandate breeding programs and you can't raise the taxes higher, the only way for you to get access to resources is to invade your neighbors who are in an even worse demographic situation. So, just like, I think Lebensraum was the excuse to, it is Lebensraum, right? I don't know German too well, but the Living Space campaign. Going out and capturing new territory, capturing until you are incredibly overextended militarily. It's a thing. Regardless whether it comes from the left or the right, the future of the system that we have is fascism. That's the thing. Like, if you think it's bad now, you have no fucking idea the lengths that they are going to have to go to in order to try to hold this system together after they fucked it up as badly as they did. Okay? This doesn't even take into account the financial issues. The fact that, I know I've mentioned it at some point. I forget which video, so you're going to have to forgive me, but I'm going to restate it here. The process of the systematically central banking, the government, in order to bail out the financial system, it used to be every X amount of years you had to double the money supply in order to bail it out. So at one point, it was every 32 years at least you had to double the money supply. And then that halved. It became 16 years. Because we're not actually generating any value. We're not making actual forward progress. We just fucking print and spend. That's all we got. All right? And it's a large part of the problem. There's no actual investment in the West. It just goes to spending. So the problems keep compounding going into the future. Keynesianism can work if people are actually productive, if the system is not geared to reward a handful of people versus, the breadth of small business and being able to build those without production coming from the spending, from the printing and spending, it's a fucking waste of time. But it used to be 32 years, then it became 16, then it became 8, then it became 4, then it becomes 2, then it becomes 1, And we will get to the point in the not too distant future where they will have to double the money supply every 6 months in order to keep this bastardized fucking monstrosity alive. Okay? That's part of the financial side. There's so much more. There's so much more. And the thing is, fundamentally, you would sit back and say, well, you know what, the government, if there were any decent people in government, they'd hit the brakes and say, no, we're not going to just keep devaluing the currency. Here's the problem. $250 trillion plus of forward off the books liabilities. All of the retirement programs, all the pensions, federal, state, and local, all of this shit. None of this was included in budget projections. None of it. None of it. They have no idea what so, like, if you were to get a massive amount of people all retiring at once, if you were to get a massive amount of people all retiring at once in short order, that full weight gets dropped onto the books. They have no idea how much they would have to increase taxes in order to absorb that. And who pays it? Do you put it on the corporates? Do you put it on the people? You already have a shrinking population, failed family formation, failed reproduction. You already have all of these dysgenic social movements, like feminism, that have absolutely crippled the forward projections into literally infinity. All right? Nobody knows where it ends because a lot of people do not want to talk about this problem or other problems for that matter. They don't want to actually address these things because they're incredibly unpopular. Okay? It's like the South Korean who came up with the idea, let's just import Vietnamese women because South Korean women are so toxic to their men that honestly, the only people who legitimately stand a chance with South Korean women are American men. And even then, American men know how toxic feminism is in South Korea. They hit and quit and boom, out the door. Okay. Looking at the forward expectations, you essentially have to root out all of the bullshit social justice, feminism, pro, whatever. You essentially have to root out all of those social movements in order to save your fucking society, at least in terms of financial projection. All right? You have no idea how much damage, nobody actually knows how much damage. You can't necessarily quantify it all because interpersonal relationships and dealings, you can't necessarily put a number on it. All right? And you can't necessarily predict one interaction versus another. You can't predict how people are going to interact and what's going to come from it. All right? There's too many free radicals in the equation. You can't narrow it down. There's simply not enough data. Okay? Long term, I'm just going to leave you with this. Long term, the expectation, all right, and I have access to some of the same information, all right. The people at the top who you generally would sit there and think are fucking retarded, all right. Like you look at a Jerome Powell, you look at Fed chairs, you look at corporate CEOs, you look at business leaders, and you sit there like, my God, these people are fucking stupid. And the politicians too, you sit there like, oh my God, these people are fucking stupid. All right? The reality is, they know damn well what the deal is. They know. They cannot say the quiet part out loud because if they say it, it officiates it. It brings the laser focus onto the truth, and then all of a sudden, that alone could trigger a fucking collapse. Which is why I get to say these things, and none of them ever will. Because you could just write me off as a kook, a conspiracy theorist, doesn't particularly matter. But, but, the people who actually listened, or who got to hear me, plot out how things were going to go like 10 years ago. All right. Prediction after prediction after prediction. Good God, I'm tripping over myself again. Time after time after time again. I have been so fucking close. I've been so on target that it's a thing. Unfortunately, I'm a Cassandra. All right. Anybody who doesn't know the term, although finance channels generally talk about it occasionally, where you're cursed to see the future, and simultaneously, or you're blessed to see the future, but simultaneously you're cursed, so nobody will believe you. Okay. The people in power know the same things. They just refuse to acknowledge it. They refuse to talk about it because somehow they have to come up with some kind of fucking harebrained, absolutely fucking retarded scheme. All right. Essentially, they have to find a way to scam essentially the entire global economy, because when you wrap it around, if you save the US, the collapse in the rest of the nations will also rebound and blow up the US again, even if we find some stability. Essentially, they have to scam the entirety of the planet into a rebalancing. Okay? The reality is, you can't fight physics. You cannot fight physics. The reality is you cannot make things just appear like, for instance, if we had something, oh shit, what was it called? Like a Star Trek replicator, all right, where you can just 3D print food on demand, and it wasn't too energy intensive, and it was refined, and it was decent. It wasn't the fucking glue quality that they're, literal trash quality. Possibly mutagenic infinite cell line products that they try to shovel into the market. Now, if we had the Star Trek future, if we had things like replicators, yeah, you might be able to rebalance everything, because all of a sudden, then all you need is energy. You don't have to worry about physical goods, physical items, physical production. All right? But considering we have to worry about physical production and energy, we're in a really bad fucking spot here. Okay? But I'm not going to ramble on any further. I'm going to end it here. You guys have a good one. If you're interested in personal or business consulting, stop by www.spaceconsulting.com without the dash. If you're interested in written work, check out the Substack. It's linked below. If you like and appreciate the video, of course, like, favorite, share, sub, ring the bell, ding the bell, tickle the bell, do all the things to your heart's content to the bell, leave a comment, hype if it shows up, and I will see you all next time.